All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Mentorship Monday. We have a very, very special Monday because my teammate Lauren, my teaching partner and teammate Lauren is here with us. Lauren, welcome to Mentorship Monday, my favorite day of the week.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to join you today. I'm excited for the conversation we're going to be having.
Let's be clear, everybody. She's always invited. She's always invited. But specific on this topic, she
Yes.
has to be in the room because she's really great. So we're going to be talking about something today that every leader feels, but not every leader addresses very well. And me being one of them, and that's the idea of appreciation, right? So, really what's should be on the most important mind. I just remember a leader telling me once, Lauren. He said, if you're not worried every Friday of your best people walking out to their car and never coming back, you're worrying about the wrong things, right? So you gotta always be making sure you're working to keep your best employees, your best people. So Lauren, what's the title of the session today?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about building a culture that people don't want to leave. So from appreciation to retention and performance.
Yeah, and this keeps me up all the time, right? After I heard that quote, like I was like, oh, that's really something that's not on my mind because we're just in the busyness of it, right? We just think about I mean, really every day, but every Friday someone's walking out and this happened to me when I was a charter school leader, because we used to have 3-week breaks. It was a year-round school. And, a couple of times we lost some really quality teachers during that 3-week break. So whether it's with my business or as I was head of school, right, you gotta start with the question, you know, and really understanding it. Why do quality employees leave your school? Not the ones who struggle, your best people. Has this ever happened to you, Lauren, by chance?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that we're going to kind of dig into this deeper today, because I think a lot of times we allow the kind of excuses to
Mm,
be the reason for why people leave. But when in reality, if they had a reason to stay, they would most likely be trying to stay. It might be, oh, this happened in my life, or my spouse got a new job, or things like that, which could be the case. But I'm sure everyone listening can think of that one person that it really hurt when they left. You
yeah.
felt it in the organization.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because, most leaders assume, right, if I support them, if I create a good environment, if I lead well, they'll stay, but the reality is people don't quit organizations. People quit other people, right? That's not what actually happens. They don't stay because things are good, right? They stay because they feel valued and rooted in the work and treated like a professional and that their voice matters and they have something to contribute. And right now, this time of year, if you're here live or within this week, it's the last week of April and all decisions are being made and they're quiet decisions, right? Whether or not to stay, do I go? And so you're either retaining your best people right now. And honestly, if I could just say, uh, every conversation you have with them directly or with your whole staff or with anybody, you're either retaining them or you're losing them, right? And I don't just mean physically. They may still be in the building, but you're potentially losing them emotionally, spiritually. You're losing their energy, their belief, their connection to the work. And to be honest, this isn't just happening at your school, right? This is the profession is taking a major hit right now. Social media is definitely not helping. And I just saw something where someone put up a post like 50% of educators are, thinking about leaving the industry, right? And that doesn't help us as educators. I get people are tired, people are questioning, they're wondering if it's sustainable anymore. So while that external factor may not be entirely your fault as a leader, it's still our responsibility to lead through it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, not just appreciation, but how you intentionally build a culture that people don't want to leave through appreciation. And that's why Lauren's here, because she's one of the most appreciative people I know. So I need to surround myself with like hundreds of Laurens. My wife is another one of them. She's so always, thinking about other people first. Because it's not it's like if you look at my disc, like I'm a CDI. I think task, people. And it's really important that we all surround ourselves with, people like Lauren and my wife and other great, thoughtful relationship focused individuals. So I'm so excited to have her here today. She also helped build you some really practical tools around this because this isn't just a theory. This is something you'll be able to implement immediately. And depending upon where you are in the world, Lauren, I don't understand how this works, but there's like multiple teacher appreciation weeks apparently, but the official one is it's next week, right? It starts like May 4th or something like that. Um, so before we get into this, checklist that Lauren built, there's really something important that we all need to understand that most leaders are showing appreciation, right? It's not that I don't appreciate people and I work to show it. They're just not landing it, right? Because here's what I've learned. This is really important. Catch this. They're showing appreciation in how they value it, not how their people receive it and value it. And this is where the idea of the appreciation languages, come in. And if you've read the book, the workplace appreciation languages, or maybe you've read the five love languages, but there's like five languages for like everything. I think this author has really done an incredible job of cornering the entire market. But just like in personal relationships, people experience value differently in the workplace.
Yeah. And this is something we see all the time, Tom. Leaders will say, I'm doing a lot for my staff. But when you actually talk to the staff, they're not always feeling it. And so that's usually not a lack of effort on the leader side. It's just, it's a mismatch in how the appreciation is being delivered.
Hmm. Lauren, I can't remember, have you read the Love Languages book?
I have not read the love language like workplace appreciation, but I've done your personal love
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. What's your love language?
So my love language is physical touch and quality time.
Okay. Well, there's no physical touch in the workplace, everybody. So we got to start right there. Yeah, quality time. Jen's too. So I remember the first time I read about this, and honestly, it's one of those moments that really kind of stopped me, right? Because my natural wiring, which I've already shared, my default, my love language is acts of service, right? And that's how I show appreciation. I jump in, I help, I take things off others' plates. I just did it. I just did it, Lauren. We just had this conversation. I just did it to one of our school leaders. Oh gosh, see, I'm just not learning. And for a long time, I thought like, man, I'm doing a lot for my team. Um, but then I started to realize something like not everybody experienced that as appreciation. And and the moments where I was actually doing things for people, like I can think like we had like a teacher's whole room, cleaned up because it was a mess, to be honest. I used to answer phones for the, front office person or just to take things off of other people's plate. I didn't realize it actually frustrated them and I couldn't understand it, right? And then I learned about the lens principle. And uh, we see others through our lens. So I was appreciating people and I wanted to help them the way I wanted to be appreciated. So really, it was almost like more about me. Like, look at me, I can do it all. Um, but for them, right, it didn't feel like support. It felt like he doesn't trust me. He thinks I can't do my job. He doesn't value me. It was a big shift for me as a leader. Because I do feel like my intention was right, but my impact and my approach was so far off. And that's why this matters so much. Because if you don't understand how your people receive an appreciation, you can actually be doing the right things, right? But missing your people. And so Um, in the book, in the languages book, we're going to just take a very short approach of looking at each of the five ways of appreciation. But Lauren, I want to make sure that we talk about the percentage of each. I think I've got it right here. And we'll make sure that we drop this in the notes. But so I'll take the first one. Is that all right?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the first one is words of affirmation, right? So it's interesting. I can't remember the year that the book was done, but it's pretty updated because they're talking about Gen Zs here. So younger employees, so less than 30 years old, 46% of their number one language of appreciation was words of affirmation. And then 47% if they were 30 years or older, right? So it's pretty consistent. So almost half of your employees potentially they just need to hear it, right? A direct, specific acknowledgement. I see what you're doing. That mattered. You made a difference, right? I can tell that, that you're putting extra effort and not generic. And so here's one thing to be conscious of. And Lauren, you may or may not fall in this category. I'm not sure. They don't always love to be appreciated in front of other people. So you definitely need to know how to do it. So like handwritten, I mean, how many of us, hands up, still have a handwritten note that someone wrote to us at some point, right? I mean, I got, boxes of them. I have to hide them from, Jen, because she doesn't let all that stuff, lay around in the house. But like, those notes make a difference. And some of us go back to those notes, right? Years later, just to remind ourselves like, hey, I am making a difference. I am doing a good job.
Yeah. And this can be quick. It can be, a hallway conversation, a note, an email. But, to your point, I think it has to feel real. It
Mhm.
needs to feel very specific and not generic. And one of our school leaders, Tom, we were talking about this in our circle last week, said that he had a schedule that he's mapped out throughout the school year and that he just kind of takes a group every week.
Mm.
And his goal is, I think he said every quarter, his whole staff gets a handwritten note. So that everybody by the end of the year has four. And I just thought, what a great way to ensure you're getting that, hitting that touch point throughout the year. So every Friday, he's like, if I haven't done them by Friday, I cannot leave my school building until I've written my notes to my staff that
Oh,
for
I so love that. I so love that. That last kind of it has to feel real. Like, so I was sharing this in like a principal's Facebook group, and someone just like nailed this. They were like, my staff doesn't appreciate it. I was like, oh well, I mean, maybe it's not their major love language, but 50% of the world is. But it could be that part, right? It's the feeling real piece. So so you may need to tell your staff, say, hey, look, I've realized I haven't done a very good job of this, and I'm, my bad, and I'm working on this, right? I think for me, my handwriting is so bad. I remember when I first, wrote some notes to my last staff, they didn't know who it was from. So it's like, oh, do I need to print my name, differently, or maybe put my business card like inside of it, like, so that's also important, right? So if you don't do it consistent enough, folks are like, oh, who the heck is this from? There's another, leader in the area. She was the assistant superintendent of the school system here, where I live. And she not only wrote it, she would just cut out like an article of a newspaper that had me in it, right? And she would just write a nice note on it and have it in the mail. Like I was like, wow, like the intention. Like I barely know her. But so I think those like little things are really important. So, go ahead, you take the next one.
sure. So the next one is quality time. And so some people will feel more valued when you give them your time. And, I do have some kind of statistics to share that is in the principal's guide that we'll be sharing with you today. But it says that, spending quality time when research shows that employees who feel personally connected to leadership, they are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work and they are 2.5 times more likely to stay longer with their
Mm,
organization. And that research has proven they are more innovative and collaborative across their teams. And so I think this just kind of goes back to Tom, what you were saying, not wanting our people to leave and how impactful that quality time really can be.
yeah.
Um, And I know it's a precious resource though, your time. That's something that I hear so many from our school leaders is that, I don't have the time, but it's it's expensive if you don't give it on the front end.
Heck yeah. That's the you nailed it. That's right. Yeah, if you don't like that cost, you see I mean the cost of turnover is massive
Mhm.
and there's like a lots of data that shows that depending upon the kind of the rank of the employee in your organization, like it like doubles the cost every time. And I think like someone who's up at the top who's been there 3 to 5 years, like it's like 16 times the cost of their salary to replace them. Not just in actual physical dollars, right? It's energy, it's time, more time, lost intellectual information, systems, right? All those things are just right out the door on a Friday. So looking at the data points, so we said 46% of younger employees love words of affirmation. 31% is a time, quality time, right? So tell me how I'm doing face to face, right? Or in some sort of, knee to knee meeting. Or like you shared, could be in a hallway, could be wherever, right? But they like to know where they are and they want to know that you see them, right? And you are intentionally spending time. Like I just remember, like this is a big one. We've got lots of lessons around the word busy. I don't use that word. It's the B word. And so, but if someone's saying to you, "Oh, I didn't come to you because you were busy," or if they come to your door and they had a scheduled meeting and you've got other people in there, like, "Oh, do you want me to come back when you're not busy?" And if you say yes, done, right? It's like, no, everybody out. This was your time. You scheduled it. Sit down. And so I think you can't afford to look or be busy if you want to keep your best people. That's a really important piece. So you got to fight that urge. And remember, body language is 55% of communication. Tone of voice is 38. That's 93% of what you convey. It has nothing to do with the words you use. And you've got to fight that battle every single day. But employees over 30, so anything like millennials and above, or like half like millennial above, it was 25%. So it's still important to them. And it's also the second highest. So the top two workplace appreciation languages are words of affirmation and quality time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just share real quick, Tom, in the guide that we'll be sharing with you guys today, there's some really great practical scripts for you in there. So, if you're like, what are we going to talk about when I spend this quality time with my staff? We've gone ahead and given you some kind of prompts just to get the conversation going.
Yeah, and these aren't just Lauren's ideas or something we ran through chat, everybody. I think what you did, Lauren, is like over a couple of years, weren't you surveying people like, what are you doing? And then you pulled all the lists together. Yeah, so these are
Yeah.
real practical resources for you that will be available. So if you're here live, Lauren will drop the link in eventually. But if you want it and you're listening to it, there will be a link for you to download it. So it's the principal's guide or something to like workplace appreciation thing she called it. So. Awesome. And so, yeah, so quality time communicates value faster than anything else. And it doesn't have to be like this in-depth, um, sit down. It could just be, which we heard, right? It was, I want to give him right. It's Hodges is his last name. Or like retire inspired. I can't think of his name, but he was one of our Live to Lead speakers. And he said the three questions to employee retention are, how are you? What are you working on? And how can I help? That's it. How are you? What are you working on? And how can I help? You do that, you're going to be in a great spot. But you got to actually follow through. You can't just say, oh, that's nice. Well, good luck working on that. So, uh, acts of service, Lauren, we'll do that one, which is and of course, you're right, it's one of the lower ones, but it's 23% of older employees, so it's almost as important as quality time, right? And younger employees, it's 17%. So still up there. But acts of service very very powerful in schools. Maybe it's covering a class, which also helps with time, right? Helping with the task, trying to take something off, someone's plate. And maybe, Lauren, I was just actually thinking this, it just kind of came to me. One of the best resources we have for this is the key result areas exercise. If you take your non-instructional team, especially through that exercise, and you start to identify the things that they're doing every single day that aren't in their job description, they just kind of absorbed because they said they would do it, and you start to remove those things in the right way, because if you start to take away things, sometimes people get upset. You just remove it in the right way and gives them back their time. That's a huge act of service. And then you're hitting, like appreciation number 2 and 3 through just a very short exercise, right? And we could just email me with subject line, key result areas or acts of service, whatever, and I'll know what you're talking about, and I'll make sure that you get that exercise if you're not part of our community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
yeah, just going back on that, ways to lighten the load, I think is so important this time of year. It's the final push. Testing is right around the corner. I think most of our schools are in not single digit instructional days, probably quite yet, but pretty close to it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, everyone's kind of feeling this anticipation for the end of the school year. And I've heard the term Maycember. There's just so many activities. December is so busy too with
Mm.
all the events, but proms are happening, school dances, graduations, recitals, plays. It's everyone's so busy, and so I think finding those ways to lighten the load for your staff can really go a long way.
And also remember it's Mother's Day, and
Yeah,
it's Dr. Tom's birthday. He'll be 50, so in May.
it's a big one.
That's right. All right, what's next on the list here?
So next is tangible gifts.
All right.
So I'm curious, what's the percentage here? Because I think that this is the one that is just so easy
Yeah,
for
tangible.
people to show appreciation. So what's the percentage?
So younger employees, 7%. So that's 29 or younger. And anybody 30 and older, it's 5%.
Yeah,
But it's probably the most common one that happens in schools.
absolutely. And so I
Yeah.
think that it kind of goes back to earlier when we were talking about leaders missing the mark. You think about all the things you've done, the swag you've given your staff, the things like that. And I think they appreciate it, but it's such a small group that
Yeah.
that's their love language.
Yeah. Don't, give them a shirt with the school's name on it.
Well,
You
you
do
can.
that at the start of the year, but not as like I like appreciate you gift. Uh,
Right.
and you just got me really thinking, like thoughtfulness beats cost every time. And I've seen so many posts lately, social media, where, hey, what's an inexpensive way to celebrate, Teachers Appreciation Week? We just told you. Write them a note, right? You don't have to go buy cards. Get them on a piece of paper. Stop them in the hallway. Look them in the eye and say, hey, I saw you do these 3 things, and I know you've probably been doing them all year, but I don't think I've ever told you how much I appreciate the fact that you're here on time at your duty every time. Or, hey, I just happened to notice you didn't miss any days of work this year. Holy cow. I can't tell you how I know you battled through all the sniffles and you like rearrange your schedule I mean, whatever it is. Like you take the time to acknowledge them. There is one more love language, Lauren. It's physical touch.
Yeah.
Uh, Look, in a professional setting, define this carefully. But I thought about it. I hired my chiropractor had like a masseuse. So they would come a couple times a year and just set up in the office, right? And gave, massages. And I mean, there are ways to do it. You could high five, right? It's there. But just be super, super conscious of it, or maybe check with your HR department to see like, hey, what's the boundaries here on this physical touch piece? No, but I mean it's a really important. It's your number one love language. I'm pretty sure it's my wife's one or two as well. But yeah, so what does it look like in a workplace for you? Physical touch. Being the
Well,
senior top
I was
two.
actually going to say, I think it's important to know like the environment that you're in probably changes people's love language appreciation. So I would not say that in the work setting, physical touch would be my top choice. Maybe just in my personal life, especially with my kids, I just need a hug from them.
Yes.
things like that. In the work setting, though, I would say that the quality time is definitely the top one for me. But if you wanted to try to incorporate in some ways, I think you've already listed some appropriate ways, the handshake, the high five, the fist bump. Maybe there's a thing that your staff all does to show like celebration. It's a woo, or
Yeah,
whatever it is, but some way to show camaraderie, in an appropriate way.
yeah. Being a member of the John Maxwell team, the guy who started it, Paul Martinelli, he's Italian. He's like, we hug, right? So, but it was really funny, Lauren. They would start every conference with the same kind of like it was like a skit. It was how to appropriately hug, right? And they would show like all the inappropriate hugs, but it was always it's heart to heart, right? So this way, and it's a 1, 2, 3, let go, right? But it was right. But I just spent 3 days with like a couple hundred members of the empowered living community for a retreat, and we all went through a lot of like emotional stuff. And I can't tell you just the power of being able to embrace somebody, going through something. And so there was a telephone pole, it's the power pole, and like a couple of the folks, they got to the top and they tried to jump for the trapeze. And like you could just see the release of just the emotion. And then they would kind of like a couple of people just got to the ground and they would just kind of lay there and folks would come over and embrace them. I mean, it's a really powerful piece. So find ways to incorporate it because, we're all human and we need connection and that's how it happens. Just be, obviously, mindful of just kind of how and what that looks like. And there is an appropriate time for those things. But to just like, not have it, and it's sad that our world, right, there are some really unwell people, right, who take advantage of that stuff, especially with kids, right? You always have to be super careful. But I mean, we're showing kids how to be human and to be like, oh, I mean, side hugs and stuff like that. So think on that, talk about it as a staff, but it's don't leave it out. It's important. It's critically important to the humanness of it all, but probably not in the workplace, right? So here's the takeaway: if you miss the language, you miss the impact. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, just doing more doesn't always work. You have to make sure you're doing the right things for the right people.
That's why this checklist that Lauren built, matters, right? It's going to help you become intentional, not just active, not just like, oh my God, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. What we do, which happens all the time because now we've got, I mean, no offense to everybody in these other roles. We got principal appreciation, assistant principal, bus drivers, nurses, like love it all. Love the whole service industry. Here's what Lauren's going to show you how to do. Appreciate everybody all the time. And you won't really have to acknowledge those, dates. You still should, but you don't have to do it. But yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
So in the guide, at the very last page, you'll find the checklist that Tom has mentioned. So some things you can do before the week, during the week, after the week. But on page 1, there's a survey that you can use, and that it'll prompt you to make a copy of it. So make a copy of it if you want to send it out to your staff, so that you can have a better understanding of their workplace appreciation. That'll just help you move from understanding this topic to actually applying it. And so, we hope that you find that helpful. Because we want this to be simple. We don't want to, make you guys feel like it's another thing you've got to do. But we also want to make sure you're being intentional because, what we see a lot is leaders care about their staff, but they don't always have a system in place for making sure they're showing it. So that's why we've created these resources for you and help you be intentional about showing your appreciation.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So I think we got this collaborative walkthrough here. So are we good? Are we covered? Did you cover all these pieces here?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Um, and all this really goes back to culture, Lauren, right? Like you said the magic word that we've been working on with our entire community systems. It's
Hmm.
all systems, right? None of this is a surprise. If you build systems, right, you can be responsive and you don't have to be reactive. So Um, yeah. All right. And if you don't know your people, you can't lead them. So I love that Lauren took the time to put the survey together and all these other resources. It's really, really important for you to use it.
Yeah. So just going back real quick. So before the week starts, take time to understand your people, have you asked them how they want to be appreciated and ensure that you're planning, personal touches throughout, not even just this teacher appreciation week, but throughout the whole school year.
Yeah.
And then during the week, if we're focusing on just this upcoming teacher appreciation, it's all about consistency. And so are you recognizing people individually? Are you creating meaningful moments, consistently throughout?
Yeah. Yeah, because what gets recognized gets, repeated, right? So if you're demonstrating appreciation, it's going to flow down. It's going to cascade down, and then, because your teachers are the conduits to your clients, and your clients are the students if you're a charter school or a district school, right? It's all the same. So super, super important. Build those systems in play.
Yeah. And then, after teacher appreciation week, or if you want to regroup towards the end of the school year, make sure you're building in time to reflect on what worked, what did we find our staff, liked the most, what seemed to not really land with them, so that you can keep track of this year after year and just keep improving
Yeah.
uh, the systems that you're putting in place.
Hey, Lauren, we kind of, before we go to the stay interview piece, we kind of talked a little bit about offline about this. So what Lauren has built for you all here, I want you to really understand this. Teacher Appreciation Week, like, shouldn't just be happening for 5 days of the year or just employee appreciation. And you've got all these potential people. If you look at our high performance indicators, right? Number six is the parent and the partner engagements and the partnerships. Like, uh, you could take this list and sit down. Like, I remember as a teacher, it was called the Sunshine Committee. And, like, you just had this group of people. So, but who else can help, right? So you could have a month that the PTO does it. You could have a month that your board does it. You could have a month that maybe you got some local, businesses. Someone can organize it from the top. But if you're intentional about all of these languages for all 10 months of the school year, I'm telling you, your culture is going to be so much different. If you're just not, hey, let's get lunch for the staff. Let's get lunch for the staff. Oh, someone dropped off donuts. I mean, what you're doing? You're like really like giving, you know, you're creating a health risk is what you are, right? If it's only food, because that's all I ever feel like. We're just eating all the time because it's the most easiest and it doesn't need a ton of thought, right? Except there's a lot of dietary and restrictions, right? So you don't want me doing it because I'll get one food hurt, everybody. Then the one like vegetarian that we have in the group, or the one I don't even know all the terms because you don't get a body like this having some of that discipline. But right, Lauren, did I miss anything? We were just having an offline conversation, right?
No,
Yeah.
I think the point was that we were talking about was, making sure we're hitting it all throughout the year, not just the week, and
Mhm.
not relying on just one group to handle it. Oh, our PTO handles teacher appreciation. Because I think that's, great if you have an active parent organization, but the teachers are then going to feel appreciated from them and not you. And I love, Tom, that you mentioned bringing in the board or businesses, like all stakeholders, play a part in
Yeah.
showing their appreciation.
That's right. And it can just be planned at the start of the year or even, through the summer. So just build a strategic calendar, who's got what each month, make sure each of the languages is hit. And I love what, Danielle just put. She said, we're all Southerners. Food is our love language. That's right. Well, she's right. Danielle from Dillard Academy. Love it. Thank you for being with us live. Yeah, good point. Okay, so let's shift to these stay interviews, Lauren. This is something that I'm trying to think of how many years ago we started to incorporate this work into our helping other leaders. It's not something I ever did as a principal, that's for darn sure. So because this is where great leaders really separate themselves. Most leaders wait until people leave to ask questions. left a couple organizations. I think this happened maybe once or twice, to me. And it's like the exit interviews, usually exactly what we just talked about. I didn't feel valued. This is why I left. You could do this, all these things. If they just would have asked me like during that time, maybe I wouldn't have left, right? So because as an exit interview is too late by then, for me, right, maybe they may do something intentionally to put it in place to help like the rest of the people on, I don't know. High performing leaders do something different. They have what's called a stay interview. And some people do it multiple times throughout the year, not just at the end, right? They do it maybe every quarter. They have a sit down with every employee just to talk about how's life going, like anything I could do for you. Where do you see yourself in a couple of years, right? So they don't wait until they leave to find out why they would have stayed, right? They intentionally do it through the year.
Yeah. And so yeah, day interviews are simple conversations. You're sitting down with your staff while you still have them. And as you said, I know talking to a lot of our school leaders, I do think that this is becoming more common. And I've heard a lot of people will usually weave this into um, the mid-year check-in time period. And I've also heard some of our school leaders talking about they'll weave them in during those post-evaluation conferences
Yeah.
where you're already having those one-on-one conversations to check in with their staff on how things are doing.
Yeah. And you want to be mindful about that because you're probably already at kind of like a heightened state if it
Yeah.
to be during your like evaluative, right? It does need to be more human, more intentional. And I just heard, over the weekend, like at the retreat, I heard my mentor say, the person who has the higher level of awareness in every relationship is 100% responsible for the relationship. Now, I've met some principals that had some pretty low awareness, and I was probably there at sometimes too, right? So it's very possible that an employee has a higher level of awareness than their boss. But I'm telling you, bosses, this is your job. You've got you've got to embrace the professional and the personal as aspects of work and the conversation piece. And I think the stay interview is a really great, easy way to do it. And because if you're not having these questions, you're just guessing. And when you guess, you're going to lose.
Yeah. So a simple starting point this week would be, identify maybe two or three key staff members that you could schedule a short conversation with, and start asking them some of these intentional questions.
Yeah, and this weekend, Lauren, I can't wait to share more about kind of what we did. But there was a facilitator we had off the ropes course, and he took us through an exercise, like a kind of like a dreaming exercise, and I don't think he said 10 words in the 45 minutes. It was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. So here's just a note, everybody. Just listen to what they have to say. Don't try to defend anything. Don't try to answer questions in a moment. Just shut up and listen and embrace it, good and bad. Because, you're going to want to like defend, you're going to want to explain, and it's not your job during that time. You're listening, you're going on a listening party. So, who on your team right now might feel unseen? And what are you going to do about it this week? Because at the end of the day, you can have strong systems, high expectations, clear accountability, great reputation in the community. But if people don't feel valued, they're not going to stay long enough to build something great with you, right? So, Lauren, any final words on this? And we've got this too, right? So did you share it in the chat? I know I sent it out, via email to everybody. The stay interview. We've got
Oh, yes, I can share it.
yeah. And we'll make sure it's in the show notes how to get access to it if you're listening on the recording. Um, yeah, so super, super important tools here. So we've got great, the checklist for the appreciation. There's actually like a nice little like a starting checklist too that Lauren made for us. And then we've got our stay interview, which has got a couple questions and Just, just some real nice, easy ways. And, don't use a survey to identify um, all the information. I think surveys are great. Lauren and I love to ask the question in a, climate survey, why did you join us and why do you stay? That's great, but you want to triangulate that with real anecdotal conversations to make sure that there's a match between your quantitative or qualitative data and what's actually happening and what's actually happening. So, love it. All right. Did we catch everything then, Lauren? Are we good with all
Yep.
this? Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. So keep building, keep leading, keep making the difference. And you know, we've got there's constant work to do. It doesn't matter how many years you've done this, Lauren, right? I mean, I'm trying to think how long. So 26 years, for me. All I know is I don't know everything. And that you've got to continue to grow yourself as a leader, be more intentional, ask your best people what are some things I need to do differently? How can I lead better? Like this is your chance to ask. What's it like to be across the table for me? That was always a question I was terrified to ask. But it's important, right? Because you're creating that psychological safety, which we're going to spend a lot of time on learning about and really, really like embedding into a lot of the programs we do, next year, because it's a major blind spot for me, a major blind spot. And so I want to learn more about it myself. So whatever I learn, I share out. And looking forward to hearing you guys or seeing you guys in more of our sessions. So we got time if there's any live questions from the audience.
Did I miss the stay interview link?
I just put it in the chat, but I'll drop it again.
Oh, no, I see it now. It just,
Okay,
it just I
perfect.
hadn't scrolled down. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lauren, there was a question that was sent in to us, and the question is, what if they've already checked out? Like, what if I feel like I've already lost some of my best people emotionally? Can this still turn things around? And it's a great question. Uh, I feel like, you know, there is a phase of going through things where like you might be resentful, right, if someone didn't tell you something. Uh, and it's important for you, no matter what, you just say, I just told you, the person who's the higher level of awareness is most responsible. You've got to lean in and you've got to ask them, not why didn't you tell me? Don't do that. Just say, if you're open to the consideration, I would love to hear what you wanted to say. Because if you don't tell me, I'm never going to learn. And I truly, value you and I want to be better as a leader. And clearly I missed this. So if you're willing to tell me, I'm willing to listen. And I promise I'm not going to defend, I'm not going to judge. I just need to hear it. And then you embrace it, right? Joy Warner, one of my best and top, mentors. I'm so, blessed she's in my life. She always says to me, Tom, do you want to be right or do you want to get it right? And I want to get it right. And so I think that's an important piece, right? So if you feel like you maybe lost some folks, like don't play the card of, well, they're already leaving and they've already quit, or I've already seen that they've checked out, or, I did everything I could. That's garbage. Like, get over yourself and just lean in, ask them. And if they're not willing, that's a real shame because that's loss. And what you could do, then you got to go to some other people and say, hey, look, I'm not asking you to share with me any private information, but I'm just asking, like, I missed this and I don't want to miss it again because I don't want to lose you. So what are the things I need to work on? I think that's where I would kind of start. Lauren, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just say, treat it how you'd want your teachers treat your students. You wouldn't want your students to feel like their teacher gave up on them right here at the end of the school year just because they were maybe projected not to pass their EOG.
Hmm.
Um, so, it's never too late to try to repair a relationship, even if it doesn't change their mind.
Yeah,
Uh, but just to make sure everyone feels like there's closure and you're ending, you're going to go your separate ways and still have a relationship afterwards.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Um, Lauren, do we have time for one more question?
Sure.
Yeah, I just saw another one. So someone asked, if I ask a stay interview question, I hear things I don't want to hear, or I don't know how to fix. And so I kind of just answered like I'm going to hear things I don't want to hear. You're always going to hear things you don't want to hear. So, Joy also used to tell me behind every complaint, there's a little honesty. It's your job once you get over your like emotional kind of like how dare they say that? Like they go, well, what role do I have in that problem? Right? If you don't know how to fix it, guess what? You can learn. Because at one point in your life, you didn't know how to do anything. You didn't know how to walk, talk, ride a bike, swim, and eat, nothing. So you got to um, like never worry about the notion of I don't know how. Like you got to just give that up. And you could just say, hey, these were three things I got on my stay interviews or my exit interviews or my feedback survey. And when I say you say to somebody, you say to someone who's way more successful than you. So that would be like a mentor of some kind, or it could be a book, like whatever, right? You go to some trainings about those particular things. Like I'm going to focus on this summer, psychological safety, and like the politics part. I'm not very good at it. The micro and the macro politics, for sure. And I'm going to work on communication. Those are three big things that I know I need to work on. And the working to make a safe environment where folks are like willing to say, I think that's a terrible idea, or here's an idea I had. Like I didn't know that those things were happening under my leadership, but now I look back. I just told Lauren, I just told you the story about Earth Day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this happened actually 17 years ago. Like, and I still have not. I don't have I until now, I didn't have the awareness. Well, now I have the awareness, right? So when you say I don't know how to do it, replace that. Up until now, I didn't know how to do this, but I'm going to, right? And just be intentional. So get a mentor, get a coach, get a book, listen to a podcast. Like it's impossible not to have the ability to find the answer. What's important is, are you going to take the time to apply what you're learning? Are you willing to apply what you're learning and start to implement that? And I would say, tell your staff, hey, these are three things that came out. I'm going to work on these three things intentionally. So when I'm still like, doing it wrong, like I need to know, but if you could be gentle on me, right? I mean, anything like that, that's going to show that you're authentic and you're vulnerable and you're willing, to learn. So that would be my answer to that one. Lauren, anything else to add to that?
I think just going back to what you said earlier, in the moment and when people
Mm,
are telling you things, in the moment, your job is to just listen. You don't need to fix it right then. You don't need to defend it right then. I think a lot of times just being willing to hear it and people feeling like their voice was heard goes a long way.
yeah, yeah. Because it was interesting. I mean, when I got like, I didn't get feedback um, from like a supervisory level, right? But I got feedback from my coach who said to me, he said, oh, here's some normal things I realized when I was in your organization. She says, I will say you got a lot of people that aren't willing to kind of, tell you stuff. And I was like, "Oh, really? I was like, gosh, still like, and I feel like I'm open to it. she said, well, but there's certain people that are like, oh my God, you could tell Tom anything. And but so there's like a gap, right? So you've got an organizational gap too. You've got a gap, right? We talked about this maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago. There's 25% of the people that will buy in it, like everything you're doing. There's 25% who think you're the worst leader on the planet and I'm not going to listen. And then you got the tweeners. And your job is to move them, right? Your job is to build rapport and relationship with them and to make sure they're okay. And so, you can't spend all of your time with the top 25%, and you definitely should not spend a lot of time with the bottom 25% trying to convince them. You got to spend that time in the middle though to build to continue to build the influence towards the culture you want. So, but anyway, all right. Well, this is a good call. Hopefully, it added value to the people here. If you're listening to it on recording, please drop us a comment. Let us know what resonated, or drop another question, and we'll talk about that during the next week. Make sure you download the resources, and as my son always tells me, make sure you subscribe because I got to get my dad over. Like I think he's trying to get me over the 500 number mark for whatever you're listening to. So, all right, thanks everybody. Have an amazing rest of your week. Bye bye.